I'm going to talk about the AEW Full Gear pre-show, and usually we don't do that because we don't have time. And doesn't that just sum it up? But we did have the Costco guys, AJ, the Rizzler, and Big Justice taking on QT Marshall. And because it has been the talk of the town, I just wanted to throw in there, I thought this was a super duper whooper fun time. But aside from the crowd being into it, they actually beat QT Marshall. He has to be one of the most underrated wrestlers in the world. Talk about understanding the assignment and just going out there and entertaining the people, which is the point of pro wrestling. That's why I just wanted to jolt in here. And you damn right it's getting it up. Also, hello my friends, I am going to zip through this intro because two things. One, I have a progress show to get to. I'm defending my Pro title today, so if you're down there, come and say hello. But also, we had a marathon AEW pay-per-view, so let's up those downs for Full Gear. Our first proper match, if we can call it that though, on the show was for the AEW Tag Team Titles. Great. It was the Champs Private Party taking on Knights of the Black Throne, taking on the Acclaim, taking on the Outrunners. Holy crap, did I want the Outrunners to ring. Just throwing it out there. They didn't, but one day I think they should be the tag team champions of any promotion. I mean, they have been going since 1985. We also started this with Malachi Black versus Mark Quinn. This is one of the reasons I loved AEW. Imagine you were told somebody that could have gone down 5 years ago. Everybody would have thought you were nuts. Anthony Bowens then tagged himself in and he went at it with Isaiah Cassidy for a bit when we got story point number one. Because he wanted to tag in partner Max Caster, but he was too busy dancing with the crowd. I do believe these two have problems. Now the Outrunners don't care, because again they have been going for the last 30 years, and eventually we got to Turbo Floyd versus Brody King. This is all I wanted in my life. I realized I was just watching television, and even I thought I'd peaked. It was absolutely beautiful. And they basically had a hoss fight when Malachi Black was being inspired by Mario, because he was doing all the stomps. When he did a moonsault to the outside. Not sure Mario ever did that. Or actually he did, usually when he was wearing some kind of suit. Soon everybody realized, wait a minute, this Brody guy is really big. So it kind of broke down into a 6-on-1 attack. Surprise, surprise, it worked. It also meant eventually Floyd and Anthony Bowens were going to do the mega handshake, but do you know who broke that up? It was Max Caster, and even Billy Gunn, Daddy Ass on the outside was going, what is going on? So yeah, if you like the Acclaimed, well, it's like a pandemic or an epidemic throughout wrestling at the moment. If you are in some kind of a team, well, you're gonna fall out. My favorite part was when the Outrunners hit the Total Recall, because I was desperate for them to get the victory. Sadly, like I told you, it didn't happen. And look, eventually the fans were chanting F.U. Caster at Max. So in terms of turning him into a bad guy, I guess it's working. At one point, the Acclaim tried to pin each other too. This is when we did have a little bit of a disconnect that AEW does need to clear up. Because Excalibur was like, you can't do that in this match. And the referee still tried to count the 3. I was like, what does that mean? Just pick a lane. It then led to another blind tag from Caster, which was going to turn out to be his undoing because this was the wrong time, because the Outrunners were able to take out Anthony Bowens. When poor Max Caster, he got hit with the gin and juice, and Private Party beat him 1, 2, 3. So this was good. It was kind of weird. The focus was on the Acclaimed, and we did have the tag team champions. But along and coming out the other side, we do make sure Private Party go into a big old feud. And yeah, I suppose we break up the Acclaimed, because that's the hints here. All will be fine. In terms of a pay-per-view opener too, Orange Cassidy was then in the back and he promised that he will beat Jon Moxley later for the AEW title, because now, as we know, this is like the One Ring. Whoever holds that belt is in control. It also led to MJF versus Rodrick Strong. What a crazy ride this has been. Now, it was a good match, as we did expect. When Max did his entrance, he had a banner that said, "Thank me later." So I had an anxiety attack. What if I forget? He also did a quick promo reminding us that he is making movies and that whole stuff with Rodrick Strong and his family. So essentially what we were trying to do here was establish that MJF is the bad guy and Rodrick Strong is the good guy. And it did work, but also the fans weren't all booing Maxwell Jacob Friedman. That's because if you do go through the story, well, he's not really the heel. The big switch in the match is that Strong was like, I'm just gonna chop this guy like he is a tree. But at one point he went to do it and MJF got out the way. Roderick hit Rita the ring post instead and basically broke his hand. But I was also like, Roddy, why did you do that? What did Rita ever do to you? Now Maxwell posed way too long after this, so Roderick was able to break his back for a while. And that makes sense. I've never not had a back, but I presume if you don't have a back, well, you're not going to be able to walk a lot. Also, you couldn't have that song. It would just be called Baby Got. You also did one on Barry Barricade, which was truly horrific. And even when MJF got back into this, he forgot what year we're in. It is 2024, and he started posing and pretending he was Adam Cole. He was going to do a Panama Sunrise. So Strong was like, no, and he popped him. I do have to say this lacked jeopardy for the obvious reasons, although there was a really good near fall. When Rodrick was going for the end of Heartache and MJF spun out into the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, surprise roll-up, and he got a 1-2. But even then, that would be MJF winning. I just didn't think that Roddy could do it. A big series of moves came after this, and it did end with the Buster of Brains, and just as Rodrick Strong was about to go for something else, MJF kind of just wiggled and jiggled, and he went straight into the Salt of the Earth submission, but again, because Rodrick Strong didn't have a hand by this point, it had been killed, he tapped out pretty quickly. And I did like that, because it made it feel like a real fight. Also, this match has been crazy anyway, so why not? Of course, afterwards, MJF got a chair and totally destroyed Rodrick Strong when Adam Cole's music played. Now, one, I said, Adam, you are so late. But also, two, it meant when he was running to the ring, he ran past the production dude and went, quick, hit my music. Now, Mike Bennett and Matt Taven were also here, which meant they were super delayed as well. And the reason I mention that is because Kyle O'Reilly popped up and he was shouting at Adam Cole, this is your fault. Look what you've done. You should have been here earlier. And we did sort of get this idea across. But I was like, what are you talking about? You were going on about this Dynamite too. Why don't you believe that Rodrick Strong could beat MJF? If anyone's a terrible friend, it's you. Also, if you were that concerned, why weren't you at ringside to begin with? So you know my thoughts on this. It just doesn't make sense. It is 2 + 2 = potato while we are wearing the shirt. And listen, I want to say, none of that is as important as Adam Cole getting back from his horrific injuries. But it has been those injuries that has made this just a little bit confusing. And I think we probably should have just got to this pay-per-view and done MJF versus Adam Cole and drawn a line under it. Also, let's never forget that the Undisputed Kingdom were the ones to kill MJF. So I'm not sure where Kyle's intentions are coming from. But look, the match was super solid stuff. So that's getting it up. But once again, in terms of the story and the aftermath, does have to get it down. When we had one of the matches of the night, it was for the TBS title. It was Mercedes Moné versus Kris Statlander. I mean, Statlander was just a monster at the start because she was throwing Mercedes around. And even as a visual, well, it did kind of make you feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum because the good guy was beating up the bad guy. Now, Moné bailed at one point, which actually works. She hit a Hurricane Rana off the ring apron. Well, she went crazy with Meteoras, and every single one was worse than the last, so we had escalation. She must have been inspired by the Dark Knight. And on the announce table, and some of the steel steps were also used when finally we got back in the ring, and Mercedes hit another Meteora, but Kris popped out. Not popped out, she kicked out, and we got a big pop. I got my words mixed up. Mercedes then tried to go at Kris again, but this is when she went back to her power game. And I kid you not, I don't think she could have slammed her harder. The Chaos Theory then looked like absolute death, and Mercedes only survived that because she got to the ropes. When somehow Moné was able to use Kris's momentum against herself, and she hit the crucifix bomb. You gotta go watch it. The next Meteora was the worst one of the lot. When Kris Statlander kicked out of that, the fans were going truly crazy, as they were, as she then got to her feet and hit this huge lariat. It was back and forth wrestling tennis. Statlander then went for her finish, but Mercedes was able to turn that into this awesome DDT. And once again, it was a 1-2-ooh. This is when Moné couldn't handle it, and she started freaking out. But honestly, in terms of making me go, maybe Kris Statlander will win, they did a good job. She then thought the Splash of the Frogs could work, but she was totally wrong, because Kris Statlander caught her and gave her an F5, when she didn't learn from that, because she went for a 450, and she missed too. Nah. Now it's important to note by this stage, Mercedes had kept on going after Kris Statlander's leg, and you could see it because she started to limp. So do you know what Moné did to get the advantage? She bit it. I was like, wow, that's disgusting. She then kind of swung Kris Statlander into Tina the Turnbuckle when she hit the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment surprise rob, and she got the 1-2-3. But all of this was well executed, and if you wanted to come into my house and say, hey, that's Mercedes' best match in AEW, there is a debate to be had. I absolutely love there was no outside interference as well, because Kris Statlander just fought really hard and was basically outdone by an asshole. So this served absolutely everybody. And actually made the title feel a little bit more important too. So once again, you should watch this, surprise, surprise, an AEW pay-per-view just doing banger after banger. It was right into Jay White versus Hangman Adam Page after this, and talk about a match that did have jeopardy. It could have gone either way. As they've had a few fights now too, we had all the story, because Jay White knows about Hangman's injuries, and Hangman was basically responsible for Jay White's injuries, so they were going to go after the other. It's like when you fight a video game boss, and it has like a big flashing red bit. Hangman did exactly this as well, because he was trying to get the ankle Although then, he just grabbed Jay White and fall away slammed him into the turnbuckle. I was like, well, I don't think that's going to hurt his foot, but you probably break his bones. He created his own distraction though, because he started flipping off the crowd. So Jay was like, all right, well, once again, I know your foot is bad. So we slammed it into Rita the ring post. And I do have to say, Barry Barricade, Rita the ring post, they had a terrible evening. I actually think they got attacked in every match. It also started to get really violent. Not like Hangman and Page swerved Strickland violent, but they were really laying it in. Then Jay White was hitting a flatliner and Page came back with a bomb of power. And man, when the cowboy went for the Deadeye, I kid you not, Jay dropped him right on his head. He did this on the outside too, but then told the referee, don't count because I want to kill this guy, which he shouldn't have done. Because then once again, Hangman Adam Page was using our ringside friends, all because he wanted to kill Jay White. Page was able to hit 2 Deadeyes, but White was able to kick out of that, which got a massive reaction. When Hangman was like, fine, I will hit the box shot lariat, but it didn't work and he missed. Instead it ended with an ankle lock, which Jay White rolled through. When he popped to his feet and he just hit the Blade Runner, quite literally out of nowhere, and he got the 1, 2, 3. But again, if you're going to have this many matches on a card, sometimes you do have to do that. It caught me unawares. It also means Jay White is on a roll and Hangman Adam Page definitely isn't, which is why afterwards, he totally murked Jay White, and when Christopher Daniels came out and said, I think you should stop doing that, Page wrecked him too. So this was just a really good match, and there is other stuff on top that we'll get to later. But one of my favorite things that AEW has started to do is that somebody can win and somebody can lose. It doesn't mean I think, oh, you're a massive loser now. As long as you tell the right story, it will always work. So these guys never miss. And speaking of which, next was Will Ospreay versus Carl Fletcher. And methinks this William Ospreay understands wrestling. Because while he is the man when it comes to AEW, Fletcher had to win this, otherwise he was going to look like a goober. It always happens in wrestling, or I turned heel, and then you have your first match and you don't win. It was like, what is the point in that? Whereas here, Carl did get the victory. On the one hand, I couldn't believe it. On the other hand, I was elated. Carl also wore a crown to the ring, which was weird, but I did feel like I had to mention it, so he must have done something right. And as soon as the bell rang, they just hit the go button. They went 100 miles an hour. And it was you go, and then I go, and then you go again, then our Nan's gonna be here, and maybe she throws a line or something like that. It's really hard for me to go through these matches because they just do everything, so I will summarize it like this. If you do like this new style of wrestling and you're allowed not to, you have to find time to tune into this today because it is just something else. And some of the spots and the reversals and transitions, well, they don't make any sense. I don't understand how they did it. And the big story takeaway is, of course, that Will Ospreay may not be 100%, and Carl knew that, so he was like, I'm gonna break your neck. Which is why very early on, he DDT'd him on the outside. Now he also hit a brain buster out there. This when the commentators were like, oh my gosh, Will Ospreay's head's gonna fall off. And I kind of believed it. It did look horrific. Will then tried for a DDT of his own, but Fletcher turned it into a Michinoku driver. When somehow Ospreay was like, nah, screw that. And he did the Sky Twister press. And Don Callis on commentary here, and even he was like, all right, look, I call spade a spade, Will Ospreay pretty good. From here, once again, you just tell me. But as sad and as nerdy as it sounds, I did kind of watch this and I thought to myself, aren't we lucky that we get to see 2 people like this create this kind of magic? I know it's the nerdiest and worst thing I've ever said in my life, but it is how I felt. And honestly, when Carl Fletcher hit this sit-out powerbomb after a series of moves, I just started applauding, because once again I got issues. We then got to skin the cat right into a tombstone, because of course we did, when we also got a Spanish fly. And every single time Will Ospreay tried to hit this hidden blade, Fletcher was like, man, I've been watching Dodgeball, and I know about ducking. At one point he came back with this massive lariat too, and they were both deceased. When we proved we were really going to town with Carl Fletcher, because he did get hit with the blade that is hidden, and that Mother Hubbard kicked out. That one really surprised me. It all did lead to this big tombstone on Simba the Steel Steps. So that's it. R.I.P. Will Ospreay's neck 2024. When Fletcher screamed, oh, I'm not going to win by countout, when he hit the most terrifying tombstone I've ever seen in my life, poor Will Ospreay was dead on his feet. He was all like wiggling and jiggling, didn't know what was going on. And I think he'd forgotten to check his levels too. He had no MP left, and even if he had increased his bar a little bit, his stamina was totally toast. So when he went for the hidden blade, he just fell down on the floor. It meant Carl Fletcher went insane and he hoisted Ospreay onto the top of the turnbuckle, when he hit this brain buster, and it was that version when Ospreay's head went right into the pad and he bounced onto the floor. Now, bravo to these two guys, because Kyle Fletcher instantly pinned him for the 1-2-3, and again, given the narrative of the match, imagine that had been a kick out, it wouldn't have worked at all. This was way better. It also meant this ended with Fletcher and Callis standing over the dead body of Will Ospreay when Mark Davis ran out. That's a bit like, dude, you are way, way too late. Also, why the hell are we sending him when some doctors absolutely needed to be out there? So that's that. As long as we capitalize on this properly, we do have a brand new star that we can probably turn into championship material, and his name is Kyle Fletcher. So once again, when you do break this down into 2024 wrestling, I'm not sure that you could have done this better. I mean, the speed, the precision, and the fact we had the story, I felt terrible for Will Ospreay by the end of this, which was the emotion and the fact that he lost and he didn't have to lose. He's Will Ospreay. Well, I've got no choice. Doesn't just get an up, it gets a golden up, because what they intended to do, well, it was pretty much perfect. So of course it's 5 stars or 6.25 stars in the Tokyo Dome when AEW did make a good decision, given that they had booked a championship celebration segment. We willed that out next. Now, this was ridiculous as she won this belt back in August, but she's a heel, so it's totally fine. And essentially, Mariah and Mina Shirakawa basically had some champagne and they danced a lot. And at one point, Mina turned her back. So May, being an absolute asshole, was like, I'm going to hit you in the head because I don't like you. When Shirakawa turned around and caught her. That was pretty good because they went smashing through this table and Mina popped up first and she had blood everywhere, which means she will be the next challenger. But I did go all nerdy during this, so you have to forgive me. Like, it was very well done and I understood the placement, but we should have done this on Dynamite. Because you want as many people to see this as possible, and when it comes to Mariah May, well, she hasn't been on Wednesday nights that much, and she should be. She's a champ. So yes, good angle, but once more, I just think we could have removed this because these shows do go so long, and it gives you some extra content for every single show we have throughout the rest of the year. So once again, while they did execute it very well, I can't get over this one. I don't know why. I get a bee in my bonnet sometimes, but it's also how I feel. I search my feelings like a Jedi. That's a down. When Daniel Garcia defeated Jack Perry for the TNT title, right move. Now, if you want to say that Jack Perry didn't have the greatest run with this belt, I would understand, but that's why this made sense too. We're clearly getting behind Daniel Garcia, so now let's see what happens. Now, a big question is, how did Jack Perry even get to Full Gear? Because last time we seen him, he had been tied to a chair in the middle of nowhere. So how did he untie himself, and who the flub saved him? They deliberately started this slow, I think, because they knew the big finish was coming, and because Jack is a dickhead, he ran away, which he shouldn't have done, because for the umpteenth time, Garcia caught him, and he used all our ringside friends, including Barry Barricade, and I killed Barry Barricade like last year, can we please leave him alone? They then really slugged it out because I think they wanted to kind of get the crowd behind them, because they were taking a long while to bite, when Jack was like, right, I know what I can do, and he powerbombed Dan through Timmy the Timekeeper's table, and shock horror, that worked. Matt Menard then freaked out of commentary and he basically willed Daniel Garcia to get back in the ring, which he should not have done, because while he did break the 10 count, Perry then caught him and essentially lawn darted him into Tina the Turnbuckle. Perry was then a right idiot because he got the TNT title and he threw it to Dan. He was like, well, why don't you use it? And Garcia actually thought about it. I was like, Daniel, if you had done that, I would have had some kind of an aneurysm. You would have got disqualified. His brain kicked in, he said no, and he gave it to the referee. They soon started slapping each other, which always works, it makes a good noise, but Jack Perry's a flubbed up individual because he smiled as he was enjoying this. And it was a terrible move because Garcia was like, all right, and he gave him the power driver and he killed him. It all led to the Dragon Tamer, and I thought this was a nice wink, wink, nudge, nudge to the past as well, because Daniel did go all the way back, but this time he's learned and educated himself, and nobody was going to grab his head in order to reverse it. Jack Perry had no choice. He tapped out. So yes, it absolutely took a while to get going, but we did do the right decision here. And if we are trying to build new stars, and Daniel Garcia is one of them, well, let's throw him into the Shark Tank and see how he is going to do. That TNT title also needs a little something, because sometimes that's just the way of things. Let's get it out. When we got to talk about Takeshita versus Ricochet for the international title, I do have a quick aside to discuss. I kind of felt like we did them a disservice. Because before Ricochet did arrive in AEW, this was one of the matches that we wanted to see. This week, it randomly got announced on Twitter in the middle of the week. Why didn't we talk about it on Dynamite? Now, the reason that is hard is because it does put you in a difficult position, especially on an AEW pay-per-view, because you know the quality is going to be really high, so you need as much extra content as you possibly can, and then even though they had planted some seeds, this still kind of felt like it came out of nowhere. So I'm being that geek again. It was not the right way to build it, it's a down. As for the match itself, I mean, come on, of course. Now, Ricky did a crossbody early on, which he will never do again, because Takeshita came back and he booted him so hard in the head. I'm amazed that Ricochet still has a face. We also got another suplex onto Barry Barricades. What did I tell you about Baz? And this was the story of this match. Ricochet no longer had a back. When he went to do a springboard, he basically fell on the floor because, again, it basically went midsection and then his neck. Takeshita also then grabbed him and threw him across the ring. That's when I was like, yeah, these two guys are great together, super fun 9000. I suppose Ricochet realized if he didn't get back into this, he was going to be screwed, so he fought through the pain to hit an old springboard, and he got a Suzuki special for a 1-2-ooh. Actually, he threw a 450 in there first, which is why Don Callis walked to the ring. When all these fans were like, "Fuck you, Don." That's right, I said it. It sort of caused a distraction too, because Takeshita then reversed the move, and he hit the least devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the Blue Thunder Bomb. Did it work? Of course it didn't. Never does. Takeshita then got the German suplex, but Ricochet rolled through that and hit this awesome lariat, but that once again didn't work at all, because the avalanche German suplex Takeshita hit after that, I mean, he really is very, very good. So much so it could have been the finish, and Takeshita then hit the power knee, but Ricochet kicked out of that, and that's when my tum-tum told me, well, Ricochet ain't gonna win now, because we are giving him too much. He still was able to hit the Poison Rana and a Shooting Star Press for a great 1-2-ooh, but when he went for the Vertigo, the champ hit the Bastard Driver instead. That's a great name for a move. Ricky then dodged the knee again and hit the Benadryller, whatever the flap it's called, for another near fall. When that didn't work, I'm like, yep, he's toast. Put some peanut butter on it. Sadly, he then took too long climbing the ropes, which for Ricochet, I was like, dude, you need to speed up a little bit more, which is when Takeshita did knee him right in the face, and he hit an avalanche Falcon Arrow to retain his championship. Now, thank Flubbins we did do that, because as a man who uses the Falcon Arrow as a finish in my own wrestling matches, if you do an avalanche one, it should absolutely be the 1, 2, 3. So Takeshita is still your champion, and I have no idea what we do with Ricochet from here. It's a little bit of a conundrum, but it was another good AEW pay-per-view match. Up. Swerve Strickland versus Bobby Lashley was next. I think I'm going against the grain a bit here, but I don't care. I flubbing loved it. And why? Because it felt different. And as ever, Swerve Strickland is just a wrestling chameleon. He looks at any match and goes, I know what we need to put in here. So he puts it in and we take away the right messages. And in terms of this one, it was Bobby Lashley has to come across like the biggest beast in the world. And my gosh, did we get that done. I mean, at one point, Bob applied a chin lock, and Swerve was like, my chin is gonna come off, which actually, going back to what we talked about earlier, could be the sequel to Face Off. I mean, who doesn't want to see chin off? John Travolta would love it. He then summoned Mario because he went for the stomp. This is when Shelton Benjamin was interfering. Right after that, Shelton tripped Swerve. That's when the ref was like, why? Why do you do this to me? My job is hard enough as it is. You gotta go to the back. It really did work though, because Lashley then ran in and hit this shoulder tackle that Swerve sold like he was a bag of pillows. I don't know what that means. Strickland then got his second wave and he jumped at Lashley, who grabbed him, just threw him into the ring apron, which is the hardest part of the ring. And this Swerve man, we don't talk about it enough. He takes as much punishment as Darby Allin. I mean, maybe not that much, but just below. It was Sim with the steel steps and right at the ring post, obviously, which helped Swerve get back into this. When he reminded us that he's totally insane, because he was trying to rip the eyes of Bobby Lashley out of his head. If you went quiet, somewhere you could hear Seth Rollins and Rey Mysterio freaking out. He then took a mushroom because he did the Swerve stomp through Alan the announce table, which was totally bonkers. Although once again, he understood the assignment. He hit the house call, he got another stomp, and flipping Bobby kicked out. MVP was then essentially casting his own distraction when Bobby Lashley speared Swerve through Barry Barricade, and somehow that looked more brutal than it usually does when he applied the Hurt Lock and Swerve's brain was like, dude, if you can't breathe, I'm absolutely gonna pass out. And that's what happened. The Hurt Syndicate also made sure to take out Prince Nana, so once again, we just got everything done right here. These three had to come across like imposing figures, otherwise what is even the point? Whereas Swerve Strickland fought valiantly, but then he wasn't able to breathe anymore, which we can understand. It's also just the start of the feud. There's so much more you can do with this. I enjoyed this massively. Up. When we got to our crazy main event. And once again, it felt different from most other things on this show, and essentially painted the tale of Orange Cassidy is living in a zombie apocalypse, and can he survive? Now, it does beg the question why he didn't want any help and the entire Death Rider crew were here, but that just tied into Orange's plan. As soon as the bell went ding ding ding, he started to hit all the orange punches, because if he's going to kill this guy, he's going to kill him. After Cassidy had done around about 7,204 orange punches as well and did a dive to Jon Moxley, Moxley came back and he beat him, and I was like, I'm pretty sure they got that from Gotch Hackenschmidt. Moxley must have watched the last match as well, because he went full Mario too and he was stomping people, when he also tried to remove the ice from Orange Cassidy's head. So what is happening here, people? Where's the respect for our seeing devices? He also totally smashed Orange Cassidy's head into Simba the Steel Steps, where he was bleeding to such a degree. At one point, Jon Moxley's hand was covered in blood, and he high-fived Marina, and you saw the blood go everywhere. I was like, oh yes, really cool, man. Definitely didn't disturb me at all. We also got a paradigm shift into Simba the Steel Steps. Marina was throwing some shots in here too. So while Orange had like flurries here and there, eventually this felt like an assault. And everyone in the arena kind of got a bit quiet and they were like, are we actually going to kill Orange Cassidy? And can we even do that because he's a piece of fruit? I mean, at one point he was able to get a few DDTs, but Moxley just took him out with the cutter. And it did mean at one point he could barely stand, but that's when he started doing the little kicks. He hit the orange punch and he hit the beach break. And while that only got a 1-2, what a nice callback. That's the combo he used last time to beat Mox. This is a different day and it didn't work. The other Riders of Death then walked out, I suppose because they were worried. When finally the conglomeration stopped them, I would have lost it if that hadn't have happened. But this sort of created a distraction. So Marina Shafir was like, I'm going to hit him with the briefcase, when we got the best surprise return, because Willow Nightingale was here. She took out Marina Shafir, give me that feud. She got a great pop as well, as did Orange, who got this case, and he smashed Jon Moxley right in the face. And man, what a near fall that was. And while I didn't actually believe he would become the world champion, you could have done it any better. Apparently the whole thing had broken down at this point, so the official had no idea what was going on. When that dickhead Wheeler Yuta were here, and he ran in with the Psycho knee, he took out Orange Cassidy, which rhymes, so it must have been the right thing to do, when Jon Moxley hit the Death Rider, and he got the 1-2-3, so he had won by tainted beans. I think he was actually going to clean Orange Cassidy after this, because he went and got some chemicals and poured it over his head. I was like, I don't want to see that. Thankfully, I didn't have to. Because instead, Hangman Adam Page came out and he trolled everyone. Because we all believed, oh, he's going to fight for AEW, he's seen the good. And just when he was about to attack Jon Moxley, Christian Cage was here, he hit the kill switch. As it turned out, he was going to try and cash in his magic contract. Now, it didn't work at all because Jay White walked out there to stop that. That was a stupid idea, because Claudio and Pac were then back out too. They basically beat up everyone. Now, some people online have been saying it makes no sense why Hangman Adam Page would do this, but Christian Cage literally told him a few weeks ago, if you do help me win the World Championship, you could have the first title shot, and Hangman's been going on about that for ages. So the story is right there looking at you in the face. Also, when we have to bring down the crime counter, because the Death Riders then left, when they got into their car, Darby Allin just flew in a car of his own and tried to kill them. I mean, he hit them so hard, even he was bleeding from the head. It really made me laugh because Mox and friends just stole another vehicle and drove away. So yes, we have to add another one to the crime counter. How fast was that? It also meant Full Gear went off air with Darby Allin screaming at these idiots. So you have to presume, even though he did lose to Claudio, he's going to make his way through the group and probably become the champ. So it's totally over the top and crazy, but if you do have a storyline where a bunch of psychos have taken over your promotion, maybe you do need to end with a nuts ending, which is a stupid sentence, and it also underlined that Darby is the guy. So I enjoyed all of this, and again, it stood out as a main event. You don't want that to feel like everything else on the card. Giving it an up. Which did indeed bring us to the end of the show, and again, I think a lot of what we are doing here is building bricks for 2025, so I'm happy to be patient and see how it works out. I mean, there's some kinks still there in the armor, whatever that means, but I believe, man, and I'm going to throw positive energy out there, and overall, despite it's too long, I really would like shorter pay-per-views. I know you disagree, but it's getting it up. Now, of course, please do let me know what you thought about the pay-per-view in the comments below. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen, which is Ups and Downs with SmackDown, where we could talk about CM Punk coming out to help Roman Reigns. Otherwise, I'll see you next week, my friends. Take care.